Hey there, Careblazer. There are a lot of companies out there now that sell programs to train memory. And they say that by going through these programs, it can help improve memory, improve concentration. And so this video is to answer the question, do they really work? All right, so let's take a peek into the research about whether brain games really work. I'm going to share with you what the research shows. I'm also going to share with you how one world-renowned doctor who's had a lot of success with improving people's memory, including those with mild cognitive impairment, subjective cognitive impairment, and mild Alzheimer's disease. He's had success in improving cognition in those individuals. I'm going to share with you how he uses brain training games as part of his protocol. So stay to the end because I'm going to share a little bit about his protocol and you might want to learn more about it. I suspect his protocol will be good for your loved one with dementia, but I think it's probably going to be even better for you, the caregiver, and for any human being who's hoping they can avoid becoming diagnosed with some sort of dementia. There was a 2018 study where they took two groups of people. One group didn't do anything. They didn't have any brain training games or anything. They were the control group, as they're called in the scientific literature. The other group was put through a brain game training program. They basically, for 3 weeks, played 15 minutes of brain games a day. Now, obviously, we would expect naturally that the group that did the brain games is going to improve in those specific brain games. They're getting practice effects, they're learning, right? Versus the people who weren't playing the brain games at all. But the interesting part about this study is that after the 3 weeks, so before the study, both groups had cognitive testing, and then after the 3 weeks, both groups had cognitive testing again. The group that didn't do brain training games, obviously they stayed the same. There was no significant difference. But the group that did brain training games for at least 15 minutes for 3 weeks, they showed improvement not only in the games they were playing, but on cognitive testing that had nothing to do with the games. Things like processing speed and attention. So that's really great news. But if you're going to be really stringent on the criteria, that study was done with a really small group of people. There was about 54 people in the brain training program that showed that had the significant results and improvement in motor speed and attention. And then there was 21 people in the control group. So we like to see studies with a lot more people just to show that it is getting the same effect in more people. But that's a promising result in this 2018 study. There was a 2017 study where basically that study looked at all of the studies they can find that used brain games. And what they found is that there was a modest benefit, modest improvement in people who used brain games for mild cognitive impairment. So for people who didn't quite reach the dementia threshold, they had mild cognitive impairment, they seemed to benefit from using the brain games. But there was no evidence after looking at all of those studies that it could prevent dementia. So sometimes you hear that claim like maybe the brain games will prevent dementia. This study didn't show any evidence for that at all. And by the way, Careblazer, I will link the specific studies in the description below this video because if you want to dive in and get into the research yourself and really learn, you'll be able to access that. And then there was another study in 2017 that did not find any significant benefit for people with Alzheimer's disease who are using brain games. In general, people who use brain games show improvement in those brain games. That makes sense because they're doing this game over and over. They're getting practice, they're getting exposure, so they will improve on their scores within the game. But whether or not those improvements actually transfer outside of the games, if those improvements in memory and intention and processing speed that they get in the game, whether that applies in their life, if they show better attention in their general life and their general functioning, better memory, better processing speed, that remains a bit unclear. The studies that exist right now on testing whether these brain games actually make a difference, it's really hard to make generalizations from them because there's multiple different companies with multiple different brain games. People play the brain games for different amounts of time, and it's really hard to know if they do show some benefit, like how long do those benefits last? Do they have to continue doing the brain games? So it's really questionable, and the evidence isn't solid. It's not very strong, but there was that 2018 small study I mentioned in the beginning that did show some improvement in cognitive test scores. So what's the verdict here, Careblazer? Do they work? Do they not? Right now, based on the research we have, there's not a lot of solid, convincing evidence that these brain games actually transfer skills outside of the games, that they actually improve cognition outside of the games. However, there is a world-renowned program by Dr. Dale Bredesen, and he talks about it in this book, which I don't think you can actually see. I will link to it below. Yeah, you're not going to be able to see it. It's called The End of Alzheimer's, and he has this program. He calls it the ReCode program. And one of the important pieces of that program that he talks about is using brain games. And actually, he encourages his patients to use brain games as part of his program. His program is very comprehensive. He breaks down specific labs, what they should be in, how they should eat, how they should sleep, what they should be doing during the day. Like, it's a very intense, comprehensive program, and he's had a lot of success. But one tiny piece of that program is the brain game. There are multiple different brain games and programs and companies that exist, like Luminosity, Cogstate, some other ones. He doesn't recommend one over the other, but he does promote people doing these programs. Now, for me personally, what do I think about these brain games? I think that anything that keeps somebody engaged and challenged cognitively can be really helpful. And I think it's important to have more to do than just watching TV or sitting on the couch. So I think that there's a place for it. I think that it can be incredibly valuable. And I think that there's no harm being done by trying these brain games, but I'm not necessarily convinced they're the end-all be-all and can totally improve functioning. The research is still out on that, but I'm a fan. I say if somebody's interested in it and somebody wants to go through it, by all means, go through it. You're going to challenge yourself, and it's something different to do, and it's going to light up your brain in different ways than it would by doing the same thing, especially if your loved one or you are kind of more gravitating towards just sitting on the couch or watching TV. Absolutely do the brain games. My recommendation, or just my hesitation, is there's no need to spend a ton of money. There's no need to buy into a big expensive plan or program because for me the evidence isn't there to involve that big investment. So you want to find something that's at a price point that works for you. Even maybe seeing what free options there are online. I'm sure most of these programs probably have a free trial, but I would highly recommend people to give these a try, and just with the understanding that a lot of times, and I don't know anything personally about these companies, so I'm not saying it about these companies in general, but it's really easy to pry on people's hopes that there can be a lot of big change. And while I do think there can be a lot of big change, it's not going to be just because of cognitive brain games. So incorporate it into your life. Absolutely give yourself something to do, but the research right now is not entirely convincing that it's going to make a huge difference. Our brains are actually quite resilient and does have something called neuroplasticity, and also can regrow brain cells. That's actually been proven in a bunch of different ways. And being cognitively stimulated can be one of those ways. But again, it's like one tiny piece in a big puzzle. You're also going to need some physical exercise, some healthy foods, some social engagement, all of those, making sure the physical health is okay. Like, all of those things are part of the big picture. This is just one tiny piece, and I recently sent out a survey asking Careblazers what questions they had. This was one of those questions, so I did want to do a video and address it. Click the red subscribe button if you want to make sure you don't miss out on any of my videos. As soon as you click the red subscribe button, there's a little bell that pops up. Click that bell. That means you'll get a notification every time one of my videos release, totally free. And I'll be back next week with that pretty exciting video I can't wait to share with you all. All right, bye.